is I've gone ahead and prepped the remaining 9 pages, and you can see I've just folded all of those in half. Next, let's go ahead and prep our pages, our stitch holes of our pages. A little tip for you is if you unfold your piece, you will have this crease here. You can see it very clearly. And we're just going to take our ruler and line it up. You want the one end to be lined up with 0, and you should see that this is indeed 8.5 inches long. We want to pierce holes at 1/2 inch, 2 inches, 2 3/4 inches, 5 3/4, 6.5, and finally at 8 inches. And you can see that we have our piercings right on that edge. A helpful tip is you will transfer those piercings to the remaining 9 pages, and a really neat and easy way to do that is to just go ahead and tuck each of these pages inside your first pierced page, tuck it inside, line up the edges, and then you're just going to transfer those piercings to the remaining 9 pages. And as you can see, I've already done that. So you will have 10 pages with all the piercings lined up on the edge. Next, let's take our wax linen thread. It's been bundled very nicely for you. Wax linen thread is a very unique product. It's specifically designed for bookbinding. And you'll notice when you open it up, you'll feel that waxy coating. It's actually a 3-ply linen thread, and it has a waxy finish on it. There's several benefits to that waxy finish. It keeps the stitches from slipping. It also keeps the thread from tangling as you're working with it. One of the tips I learned is if you warm up the thread by running it slowly through your hands, like so, it'll actually smooth out the wax coating on there, and it'll make it much easier for you to work with. It'll keep it nice and straight. Get this out of the way here. Now you'll want to thread your wax linen thread onto your needle, and if you're a little bit having trouble with this, if you're having trouble getting the thread through the eye of the needle, you can actually smush the edge of the thread down flat with the end of your needle, and that'll actually hold its shape, keeping it nice and flat so that you can just thread it right through the needle very easily. And then you just want to leave yourself about a 6-inch tail. Now that we've got our needle threaded, we're just going to set that aside for a moment, and you'll notice in your packet that you have a yard of grosgrain ribbon. This is going to add a decorative element to the stitched edge of your page and the binding. It'll be really beautiful. So what we want to do is we want to measure off 2 4-inch pieces and just snip those off. And again, you just want 2 of those. The remaining length of your ribbon will actually be used later in the project. So I've got my 2-inch pieces of ribbon. We're just going to set those there. Let's start stitching. You want to start in the far end, one of the far ends of your book. You're going to push the needle through from the outside of the fold to the inside. And you'd want to just pull this all the way through until you leave yourself a 3-inch tail. And 3 yards is a long piece of thread. What I like to do is just tuck that tail right underneath my thumb so it doesn't slip. Now a helpful hint when you're adding the ribbon is this is actually going to be added between holes 2 and 3. You can see they're just 3/4 of an inch apart. And a really helpful tip is to just take a small piece of tape, Scotch tape, and you're going to tape that ribbon right over that 3¼ inch or 3/4 inch space here. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with both of the places where I'm going to be putting ribbon. And that's in both 3/4 inch spaces. Okay, so I've ended with my thread on the inside of the book here. And what I'm going to do then is from the inside out, I'm going to come up that second hole right there next to that ribbon. Again, pulling all that thread through. And then I'm going to stitch over the top of that 3/4 inch grosgrain from the outside to the inside. Gets faster, I promise. Then we're going to go ahead and come out hole number 4. So this time we have this long stitch on the inside, and we're going to pull out next to that second piece of grosgrain ribbon. Stitch over the top into our next pre-pierced hole. And finally, we're going to come out that very last pre-pierced hole from the inside to the outside. You can see I've got stitches all the way across that first folded piece then. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to close it up, holding it tight, and I'm going to come in with a second page. And what I want to do is I want to come in underneath. You'll see that this is the free edge of my ribbon. So the second page you're going to bring in right underneath your first page. And I want to have that second page open. I'm holding my first page closed, second page open. To add the stitch here then and add this second signature, we're just going to stitch from that last hole from the first signature into the same adjoining or adjacent hole in the new signature. And it's just going to make the tiniest little stitch hooking those two signatures together. Now as you're stitching, you're always going to want to just kind of pull things taut. Don't really yank on it, but you do want to just pull those taut so the stitches is tight. So now we've got the first and the second signatures connected. So we're just going to work our way across that second set of stitched holes that we've made. So we're coming out on the one side of our grosgrain ribbon, stitching into or right over the top of the grosgrain. We'll keep stitching across the holes then here until we end up at the other end of the page. And we're just going to come out this final hole. Now, one thing I want to tell you is before you end up tying these two ends together like we're going to be doing next, you want to make sure and see on the inside how I'm kind of loose. You don't want to be a slacker, okay? You want to make sure that these stitches are nice and tight so you can actually pull on both ends here. You want to just make sure this is nice and taut before you add any knots. And this is the case when you're adding each signature. You want to make sure that before you add any knots or stitches that the the thread is nice and taut. We're going to tie a double knot here on the end. So we're actually tying the thread, the tail, the 3-inch tail with the thread that still has the needle on it. And now these two pieces are joined perfectly. Next, you'll be adding the third signature, and you're just going to continue stitching along back and forth. So let's do that. We're just going to stitch from the second signature into the third, just that tiny little stitch that adds the two pieces together. Okay, and you'll notice that I stacked from the same side. You want to make sure that you're never covering up your taped side. You're always stacking from the back, adding those pages underneath.